We are delighted to be here at Bangalore Tech Summit 2020. Yesterday we unveiled the Art Park, and so this is exciting to be actually having this session because this is what all of Art Park is all about. So I'll quickly give it, a bit of introduction about the topic, and then we will actually introduce the panelists, and then we will get into the panel discussion. So one of the things that we are seeing, especially in this Bangalore Tech Summit, is the whole focus on what's actually going to come next. So that's why this is an apt topic, AI and robotics, the vision for tomorrow, because these are two big waves which are going to define how it's going to be tomorrow. Very quickly, as I got introduced, I have almost 19 years of making errors in building technology, product, strategy, AI investing, entrepreneurship, and policy. Last 10 years, I've been in AI space. I started the first AI chatbot company in 2009-10, and then set up the first AI-focused fund. And now we are setting up something which is truly a landmark in the city of Bangalore, AI and Robotics Technology Park. It's a very unique initiative, seed funded by Department of Science and Technology and Government of Karnataka to the tune of $30 million. And it aims to bring together industry, academia, government, along with society. Of course, it's a joint initiative by Indian Institute of Science and AI Foundry in a public-private model. So very quickly, these are the AI wave. We think of that as the one big wave, but it's actually a combination of these four big subwaves coming together and adding on top of each other. Wave one was this handcrafted machine learning systems, and then deep learning came in, and we started to get better in terms of speech and vision. And then the third wave, which is just starting to happen, where we would take this AI and start to put it into real world, and of course into things which will move and act on that. And that's actually something that is interesting, and we're going to talk and touch about, because that's going to actually shape next 15 years of time frame. So we have seen this, very gradual progression. You can see that, speech and recognition, we started to get better and better. Also, even in strategy, and I think that now all these three areas, we're approaching something which is better or equal to human beings, at least in some cases. Now, GPT-3, which came in last year, and it's actually this year, and it kind of like became famous because it gave us a very interesting perspective on how Wave 3 could be very interesting, where you could take models across domains and it could work really well. And of course, this still has got its own limitations. But what we are seeing is an indication of things to come. What we see is that AI and robotics combining together, the technology innovation along with business model innovation is going to actually create what we call as pivotal waves, or what we call as the era of hyper innovation, and which is completely going to reshape, especially a country like India, which doesn't have much legacy in either of these areas. So what do we see in terms of future? So if I look at healthcare and pharma, we are seeing this massive shift from, and we are all, having this virtual conference because of COVID, and this momentum is accelerating. We're going to go from this event-driven intervention model to a preventive continuum. And yesterday we actually had a very interesting discussion on that. This is interesting, perspective to have, that more robots will be doing surgeries than humans by 2040. Autonomy will completely change mobility for us, for goods around us, and revolutionize supply chain. In fact, it's kind of interesting to see that Japan plans to make 50% of the domestic fleet unmanned by 2040. And this mobility is, of course, indoors and outdoors. And I think something we have Helene here. She's going to touch base on that. 2035, we will have more self-driving cars than cars on the road. It will be forcing us to redesign mobility around autonomous systems. We're going to have more smart city in Asia Pacific, looking at smart grids, fixed visual surveillance in terms of safety and intelligent traffic management. We are looking at digital nomads being the new normal by 2030, with 5G combined with AI and robotics, completely changing the way we work. We are looking at moving from digital to virtual currencies, and it will be embedded in every single workflow. in terms of getting access to. So there may not be any banks anymore, but the banking is going to be seamless. Physical digital retail is going to be the next big wave of disruption in terms of commerce. And of course, the one big area which is starting to get impacted is how do we learn and how do we actually interact with these intelligent systems? And that's where we see this new levers in terms of experience economy in place of knowledge economy that we have now. So there's going to be this big transition. In terms of privacy, we would be doing things while assuming that everything is going to be open, yet man-machine interactions will be really secure and seamless. This is also interesting perspective where you will actually have safe, reliable, and robust multi-use AI. It will be cutting across civilian, industrial, and defense to enable safe spaces for all of us. So this is the thing that we see that this is the AI and robotics future, and probably we'll all have to build together. And with this, quick introduction to the topic, now ask our panelists to introduce themselves. Can I ask Bharadwaj?
Thank you, Umakant. Hi, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Bharadwaj Amrutur. I am a professor here in the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. And as Umakant mentioned, we recently have launched this not-for-profit foundation called Art Park, AI and Robotics Technologies Park. And I head the research for that Art Park. So I'm glad to be here. Look forward to this discussion.
Fantastic. Jay Venugopal from Flipkart.
Hey, thanks, Umakant. Thanks for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. So I'm Jayendran. I lead product and technology for Flipkart. And as part of that role, I also lead design user research as well as data science. So would love to share some of the things that we have been doing here at Flipkart and also the larger context on how I think AI is transforming the economy as we go further into the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Helene Nicolason.
Yes. Thank you very much, and thanks for a really exciting introduction and for having me. I'm very, very pleased to be here. And myself, I'm Helene Nicolason, and I work at the Volvo Group. So we often get mixed with the Volvo cars. So what we are one of the world's leading in manufacturing trucks, buses, construction equipment, marine applications, and industrial engines. So that's the company I'm representing. We'll be very interested to talk about robotics in mobility today. And myself, I worked in innovation pretty much all my life. I'm heading a department on innovation, ecosystems, and partnerships. But I'm also head of Campex, which is a global concept with local empowerment on with a mission to accelerate technology and business innovation. So really looking forward to the discussion, and thanks a lot for letting me be here.
Fantastic. Vishal, over to you.
Okay, so I actually started off by congratulating you, Umakant and Bharadwaj, on Art Park. I think it's a marvelous idea. More importantly, it's taken shape. It's been an effort of yours for a long period of time. I'm absolutely delighted that's a reality today. I, of course, need to first introduce the company that I represent, NVIDIA. As many of you probably know, that NVIDIA is built on a foundational mission, and that foundational mission is to solve problems that traditional computers cannot solve. Problems like computational medicine for science, robotics, for autonomous driving, and broadly for AI. At the highest level, we obviously simulate the real world with physics and intersect that with artificial intelligence. My role at NVIDIA is predominantly to look after the opportunity here in Asia South. And I'm absolutely delighted that I have such an august company, and hopefully we make the best use of this session and be able to give you certain inputs and observation that we individually have. So look forward for this session.
Fantastic, fantastic round of introductions. So very quickly, I'll jump and invite Professor Bhardwaj, with a question on, what are the key technology innovations you're seeing happening in AI and robotics that will shape these, next, 5 to 10 years, 15 years kind of time frame? What do you see out there?
As you know, the modern AI revolution, in some sense, is built on data, right? And I think we still have a long way to go in terms of unearthing all the data which is available for, kind of doing even better AI. And part of the problem for that is kind of trust. There is a lot of data, it's kind of locked up. And we don't have a mechanism yet by which people can release the data in a way where they are sure that it is used only for what it is meant to be and not for something else and so on. So one of the important pieces of technology which I believe will emerge and become mainstream, and it's already happening, is around this notion of confidential computing, which will really allow us to kind of create a framework where confidential data can be released, while preserving confidentiality and of course privacy. I think that will unlock a whole host of new kinds of applications. It will unlock new marketplaces and so on. So I think that's going to be a very exciting emerging technology paradigm which is going to happen. Kind of related to that, I also see is the ability for a common person to access the power of AI, right? And so-called equitable access, bringing in fairness and so on. And I think that will be enabled again by very rich interfaces for a common person to actually interact with these kinds of systems. And as you know, in India, we have the smartphone has really unlocked the potential, economic potential, and the capability for even a street vendor, right? The question is, can we not actually allow a person like that to, even do more sophisticated kind of analysis, which will help them better, but they don't have to be sophisticated programmers, but they have sophisticated thoughts, sophisticated needs, and can the systems evolve in a way? Can AI help actually match the capabilities to their needs without them becoming expert AI programmers, right? So that human interface aspect, I feel, is going to become something really important as we go forward. And the other important trend, what I see happening is the movement of robotics away from assembly lines into the natural world, right? And that is also going to be enabled by this, again, the advances in AI and the dropping costs of sensors and so on, thanks to the smartphone revolution. The challenges, of course, in the natural world is it's an unstructured world, right? Unlike in an assembly line in a factory. So that makes the problem very hard, where you have to preserve safety, you have to be able to guarantee things working when you can't control many other things and so on. Also, if you can do that, you can actually have these robotic devices, machines being co-workers, right? Collaborators with humans. And I think that's also going to be like an exciting kind of evolution which will happen as we go forward.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, I think yesterday we released a peep into what we're building in Art Park in terms of avatar robotics, and something that is interesting. And I think maybe if you want to point out what could make it come alive, I mean, in terms of technology.
Absolutely. So if you kind of think of this problem of, say, giving nursing care to a patient, right? And the nurse themselves are kind of not with the patient, but they are somewhere else. Because having good nurses, I mean, they are a scarce resource, frankly speaking. And the number of people who will need nursing care is going to grow more and more as the world's population ages. So you really need to have these kinds of intermediaries and these co-working nurses or co-working robots who can deliver this kind of a care. And this is a very complicated problem, while for us humans, it's very straightforward to kind of interact with another human being. For robots to do that in a safe way, in a natural way, where the other person feels comfortable, I think it's a very challenging task, and it is really all the latest advances and further of AI will have to be brought to bear on this particular problem. So that's just one example. I think there will be many such applications in many different verticals.
Yeah, so just for everybody's knowledge, I mean, we released a teaser of what work we are doing. It's called Asha. It's a robotic avatar nurse. I mean, you can find it on YouTube or Twitter. And if you have any questions or if you want to contribute, you can reach out to Professor Bhardwaj through our website, and we're very happy to collaborate. So thanks a lot for this initial deepening of knowledge in terms of what are the key technology innovations. That actually points me to a nice segue into the next section of the conversation, which is about how do companies see these innovations kind of changing the paradigm in some sense, right, for their own companies, both in terms of technology innovation as well as business model innovation, and how do these are going to impact the core functions of their organization. So would love to know, what are the major initiatives that, some of these companies are taking up, especially since we have three major companies here with Flipkart, NVIDIA, and Volvo. So I would like to start with Jay on what's happening at Flipkart. I mean, how do you see this, panning out, in future, and how it's going to shape or reshape the market opportunity as well as what Flipkart is going to do about it?
Absolutely, Makant. Would love to talk about it. See, if you look at our platform, right, as the largest e-commerce marketplace platform in the country, we serve a few tens of millions of users on a daily basis, and we collect extensive level of clickstream data, amounting to a few tens of terabytes of data every single day. On our platform, right? So this is just a business as usual day. On days like Big Billion Day, it goes easily 1 to 2 orders of magnitude, somewhere in between, right? So this wealth of data lends itself very easily for us to be able to think about how do we harvest all the knowledge that is latent in this data to understand consumer preferences better and to be able to serve them better through our platform, right? So our vision is to be able to bring the benefits of e-commerce, namely selection, value, convenience, to every Indian, wherever they may be residing, right? So India being such a diverse country in terms of even physical reach, as well as cultural nuances, languages are different, etc., right? To be able to handle this sort of complexity, we crucially depend on AI technologies. To give you some examples, even in terms of deep personalization, literally every single person who uses our app platform, for example, actually sees a completely different version of the platform. Because it's highly personalized based on what we know about you, based on your previous clicks and all of that stuff, right? And we use basically models that are online learning models that refresh very, very quickly, which learn on the fly, including the current session. And be able to rewire itself to adapt so that it can serve you better. Otherwise, the complexity of dealing with a catalog that is of the width that we have, right? Several tens of millions of unique market SKUs would be extremely overwhelming for anyone, right? So the right merchandising banners have to be surfaced to users. The right ranking algorithms have to be used so that you find what you would like within the first 1 or 2 or 3 pages, right? You're not going to scroll through 150,000 t-shirts on the platform to find what you're looking for, right? So these are some of the examples on the user side. And of course, we are investing in voice technology because for the next 200 million users in India who are coming onto the internet and adopting e-commerce, they are much more comfortable using voice, right? So these are users from tier 2 and 3 cities and beyond, right? So voice technologies, translation technologies, using automated translation to be able to translate at scale, including user-generated content, rich product descriptions, and all of that stuff, so that we can provide vernacular interfaces to users is another big use case. So now shifting gears, right, I would also talk about some of the very non-conventional use cases we have invested in. For example, within one of our group companies, Myntra, we actually experimented very early on, almost 3-4 years when this technology even started emerging around generative networks, right? So we used GANs, generative adversarial networks, to be able to actually generate new T-shirt designs for one of our private label lines called Moda Rapido. And over a period of 1 to 2 years, we were able to make the model good enough to a point where it was actually throwing up designs that were outselling designs that were created by humans. And these are humans who are deep into the design world, who have been doing design for a long number of years, right? So just the machine being able to use images, being able to use previous sales data, and using this GAN technology and deep learning is able to do something like that, and which is completely bottoms up generative technology, right? And of course, on the back end, we use AI for a variety of things, including basically in terms of how we do logistics planning and optimizations there, trust and safety, fraud management, every single element, right? Pricing the catalog correctly, meaning giving price indications to the sellers so they can optimally price it. So it's just a wide variety of things for which AI is used and is critical for dealing with the kind of scale that we are dealing with. Yeah, I'm happy to talk more about some of the interesting use cases across logistics and other backend use cases as we go further into the discussion.
Fantastic. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, Flipkart has been one of the few homegrown companies in India which have actually reached that kind of scale. And it's exciting to see that you're taking the technology and adopting it to, the billions of users that we have in India, and the varied need of them, right? Like the languages change, the way they interact change. And I think for that mass personalization, probably AI is probably the only way to go. And I think love to talk about, how you're mapping that demand to supply, where probably a lot of robotics might be used actually as well. So later in the day, but I would very quickly would like to also, ask Helene to talk about what they are seeing in Volvo, and how are they seeing some of the core functions changing in their company.
Thanks very much. I'd be happy to do that. To set the scene a little bit about the transformation, we will focus on, of course, artificial intelligence and robotics here today. But just to set the scene, it is a huge transformation in terms of new technologies. Well, not new anymore, but introduction of different types of technologies. The speed of development is really, really high. And we have new players also coming in. We talked about a little bit about the marketplace before. So just to set the scene, for us in the Volvo Group, we have a mission to drive prosperity through transport and infrastructure solutions. And we have really clear sustainability goals. And in order to achieve that, we see robotics, automation, automated driving, electromobility, and digitalization as really important means to get us there, so that we are part of reducing the climate impact. And we are on a great shift, and it's me, who's been around for quite some years as an engineer, it's so exciting and really inspirational to be in this era of transformation. And we are in a great shift to, for example, electrification. I just say a few words around that. We are working hard on a battery electric vehicle and also on hydrogen solutions. And we are aiming for 100% fossil-free Volvo Group vehicles in 2040. So already today, there are applications available, vehicles available for applications, but the introduction plan to get there to 2040, 100% fossil-free Volvo Group vehicles on the market, it's really, really a quick-paced plan. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and share a slide which combines all these different components. To just emphasize a bit on artificial intelligence and robotics, autonomous driving, that is one application. Of course, like we mentioned before, we work a lot on this in manufacturing, but I will focus on mobility here. And just to show our ambition and that we really believe in this, in January 2020, almost a year ago, we inaugurated Volvo Autonomous Solutions, which is business area in the Volvo Group. And why did we do that? Well, it was in order to be speedy, to accelerate the development, the commercialization, and the sales of transport solutions. So it is a complement to the rest of the Volvo Group's offer. And in this slide, you see 3 segments that are in focus today. It's mining and quarry, industrial material handling segment, and it's ports and logistic centers, another segment, and it's hub-to-hub highway segment. And you can look at this slide in a timeline. So where the focus is right now, it is in mining and quarry, confined areas. And there we are almost it's very, very close to commercialization. And here you see 2 applications. One to the left, which is from a mine in Norway, and then to the right you see a concept called Tara, which looks a little bit different than what you are used to see. And here it is really important to work together. So that is my concept. Campex is focusing a lot on way of working, to work in partnerships to be able to develop solutions like this. And the strategic partnership with NVIDIA, for example, who are heavily involved in this work. And also that it is really a strength to be a group, to be a global group, because as we already have seen and we talked about, the strength and speed of innovation in India, for example, to contribute to these solutions. And here we share the development between the different parts of the Volvo Group, but also we have something that is really strong, and that is a modular architecture approach. So you can build your solution based on a modular system. So here in the Tara concept, the yellow one, it is a combination of electromobility, automation, and enabled by connectivity. And it's a safe, fossil-free, and productive little fella who like I said, it's really working well and soon to be commercialized. Or for the other parts here, and if we move to the next one, ports and logistics centers, it's a lot of exciting pilots together with customers. Customers are key in this, and also further to the right, the hub-to-hub highway. But it's just to give you an example and present a little bit what we believe in to be in the area of autonomous driving. And one clear trend you can see is that open up working partnerships, much quicker development loops, but also what we talked about, the marketplace business model innovation, because here it's much more a full transport as a service. So we're moving from a little bit more product oriented before to much more solving a complete transport operation, what we call more industry verticals. So to take the customer's operation in a port, for example, and follow through all the way. So
fantastic.
That is one
I think
example.
that's a very interesting. Yeah, I think that's actually interesting and exciting. I think not only we are seeing this technology innovation taking place, but at the same time, we are also trying to actually see what kind of business models would fit these technologies. And I hear you as to how you're completely reshaping the company's core DNA in terms of the business model to take care of that opportunity.
Exactly.
So exciting here. So
thank you.
yeah.
I
So
will try
actually,
to stop sharing here. So then, good. Now I figured it out.
Thanks, Aline, for that excellent introduction to what Volvo is trying to do and how it's shaping the future. At this point of time, I would like to actually ask Vishal, because he gets a bird's eye view of this whole evolution, with NVIDIA, because they are pretty much everywhere, right? They have a really big, almost a monopolistic, market in deep learning, and anything that you do with that, I think you're using NVIDIA chips. And now with ARM, coming into their fold, I think it's going to be a whole bunch of solutions. So on a horizontal model, it's, what are the things that you're seeing that are going to completely reshape how we think about, these verticals in next 10 to 15 years?
In the larger context, the convergence of technology is obviously disrupting everything around us. It's disrupting our economy, it's disrupting our educational system, it's disrupting our life. It's all about digital transformation. In my introduction, I, of course, did speak to you that foundationally, everything that NVIDIA does is to do with solving problems that normal computers cannot. And about 7 or 8 years back, we had an observation. And that observation was that anyone with a domain experience, any domain expert, whoever can collect their digital experience, what people call as data, has a capability to teach a computer to write a software that no human can write. In other ways of looking at that statement and a realism that all of us are now today talking about is the fact that we can augment the work of our software engineers. And this is possible if we basically take the large data sets, or as I call them, our digital experiences, expose them to this innovative algorithm, what people call as deep learning, and run it on a very different kind of a compute, a powerful compute, a supercompute, then we have an ability where a computer can do certain tasks to write a software that is gigantically big and different and can augment the work of our software engineers. I think I've said a lot in that paragraph. Let me double click on those. So only 0.5% of people write software. Think about it for a minute. If more than 90% people, and all of us, are capable of teaching rather than programming, if 90% of the people who are capable of teaching can now augment that work, it changes everything around us. Think about it from an internet perspective. They say there are approximately about 2.8 billion active users over internet. And $1 trillion worth of economy works, $140 trillion worth of economy is working. And it's fundamentally connecting humans. But if there can be an intelligent system that gets induced into it, which works as intelligently at the edge along with humans, makes our life better, makes our communication better, then that $140 trillion transforms. More importantly, internet moves from 2.8 billion people being connected to maybe closer to 7 billion people, maybe many, many trillions of devices working together. That transforms everything else. But what does it really mean for us? What it really means is that you got to look at the software very differently. You got to look at software as something which is software defined, software programmable, your products being software defined, software programmable, your buildings being software defined, software programmable. Everything around us, including our cities, transform. It wasn't long back, right? About 5 or 7 years back. We used to define software as a piece which was as dumb as a brick. Today, we're calling software as superpower. We're calling it better than humans on many, many perspectives. So it also changes the way we looked at software. Earlier, we looked at software as a shrink-wrap software. You tell a software engineer, based on what you're wanting to do, the software engineer imbibes what you want to do, draws up a beta, takes a feedback, hey, is this good enough? People figure out that this is good enough for now. You go and print 1 million copies, get it shrink wrapped, reaches the customer. Then you basically add another version to it. and then you publish another million copies of that. As against it, now the software is so gigantic, you can't even put your hands around it. How will you shrink wrap it? So at all given times, the software is in float, is being in beta, is being in quality assurance, and is being OTA'd moment the validation is done. So that's the first part that I would like people to put their hands around it. And if that is really true, then we are really talking about the software, which is data driven and is being interfaced with an algorithm like Umakant's introductory slide, which had a function that is omnipresent, a function that's all-time learning, a function that can learn out of the data itself. That basically means that we need to understand what data to use, what data not to use, what data to fuse, what methodology that we need to apply, what infrastructure we need from compute to storage to networking, and more importantly, build our organization, which become chief rejection organization. If we are going to be an AI company, we got to be a chief rejection company. What do I mean by that? The amount of data that is coming at us is in petabytes and petabytes. If you're going to basically have everything coming at you, all you will have is the data around you and you wouldn't know what to do. But if you already know about the data, if you already know that I know multiplication, I don't need it. Hey, I've seen it, I don't need it. I know how it works, I don't need it. Does it really need to make a difference? I don't need it. That portion, that 0.1%, which I don't know, is what I want to learn and add it to myself, just like how we do schooling. We don't go back to revise our multiplications. 2 is to 2 is equal to 4. We already know that. So we need a system that is going to be driven on data to basically have a rejection model through which we really work. So software defined with the data-driven approach are the two principal foundations that are working. And the third thing which is really happening around us, because of the contextual problems, because of the privacy challenges, something that Bharadwaj touched upon, everything is going to be harnessed at the edge. The edge will be really smart, whether it will be those wonderful cars, trucks from Volvo, because you will have to do it at the edge. You have no time to go back to the cloud. Only if you have erred, you want to learn something, then you go to the cloud. You pipe that intelligence at the edge, take it back to your company, you learn from it, you bring it back to the edge. And that's how Asha is going to be even more useful than in future. And it's going to be built on two fundamental premises. And those two premises, which are going to really happen in the next 3 or 4 years, even more, is firstly on what's going to happen in the language front. Language front is going to go through what images went through, what we call as the ImageNet movement, or what some people like to call as the iPhone movement. The conversational AI, when Flipkart is able to converse with 200 million people on the foundation of our language, not through a translation which happens from English to Hindi, from English to a Marathi and English to this thing, because I have seen my own children who went to all these wonderful schools and made English their first language. When they speak Hindi, they forget the context. Their Hindi is so bad that if somebody else is watching, they will laugh. Just like today we laugh when we are so tolerant to all the chatbots, to everything that we do, we are tolerant to that. But when you want them to converse like humans, you should be able to do it in the context and a meaningful way. That moment is around us. That moment will probably take another 3-4 years. That absolutely will happen. The second part that I really want to touch upon is fundamentally with neural networks getting infused with physics. How data-driven world is going to infuse into computer simulation and basically take ground truths, some of it in computer simulation, some of them in neural networks, and make your experiments go faster and make your results faster, just like how we've actually done for drug discovery. The reason why that magical moment for COVID is getting solved so quickly is the fact that artificial intelligence has really worked behind it. And what people are apprehensive that, hey, typically a drug discovery takes 10 years and billions of dollars has been shortened to a 1 year or 2 year span is a classical example of that. And that moment is all around us, is the fusion of that. Let me just take a minute more. I know I've taken a little bit more time explaining from a very basic how people should read AI, how they should look at AI. It basically means something really different. It's a new form of computer science. But let me take a few examples, some examples Bharadwaj has taken, some Jay has taken, some Helene has taken, but let me just tell you about a few. $140 trillion economy. They say $1 trillion is lost in cybersecurity. If you're going to have multiple sources through which fraud can happen, can you find that out in milliseconds and shut down that port? I think is the way people have started experiencing that. And American Express has shown to us in a couple of milliseconds, they can actually shut down the site where the fraud is really coming out from. Flipkart, Walmart have already shown to us that their business is really about a couple of percentage of gross margins. If the inventories really go wrong, if the management and logistics go wrong, they denude that couple of percentage of margins. Imagine that they are talking about thousands of retail outlets, different stores. The weather changes differently in Delhi. Delhi is going through a different climate. Bangalore is going through a different climate. Goa is going through a different climate. The stores need to be equipped differently. How do you really make a difference? So that 0.5% to 1% that you can save is all the difference that you're going to make through the technology part. Robotics, something that everybody wants to talk. You and I have discussed this, Umakant, many a times. Every time we talk about autonomous vehicle in India, there's almost a joke here. There's a pun which is created saying that the world can solve the autonomous problem here in India is when they have arrived. And I have this to say, and Umakant has this to say. Look, don't look at extreme. Look at what you can realize. If we can have our tractors in smaller farms on a different economical model being served to all the farmers that can work and take advantage of them via augmented agriculture. If in Silchar, in Leh, where my father would serve, where you can't reach out, if the tanks have to reach there and it doesn't require humans, you can serve them because it's a definitive area. And more importantly, if we can bring that technology to help humans, those who don't have legs and limbs, and it can serve them along with you, you solve the problem of a human getting augmented with that part of it. More importantly, in Bangalore, when we talk, of course, it's not happening in recent days because of COVID, we can't drive, right? I mean, we are on the road for an hour. If there can be a distance maintained, if I can do my emails at the same time, and if car can be protected at that time, and I can protect the people around me, it solved the problem that I would love to solve. So I think we are very, very close to many of these things. I want us as Indians to understand that, hey, firstly, this is a different computer science. There's a computer to write the software, and there's a computer to run the software. They're two different things. Second thing is we have to move and create an infrastructure where infrastructure, data sets, and algorithm can work together. And thirdly, we are very short on talent. We need to very quickly reskill ourselves and move forward on that. With that note, Umakant, sorry about taking a little longer. You know, I get passionate about this. Sometimes I speak a little longer than needed, but thanks for your patience.
Well, yes, I think some of the interesting things that you talked about is like, yes, the opportunity is huge. I mean, you talked about $140 trillion. And there's so many changes are happening. And I think yesterday, our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, also talked about the fact that it's not the first mover advantage, but the best mover advantage, might actually, be the case in this era of hyper innovation. So, what is it that if I were to extend the thing that you were talking about, it's like, what are the key lessons for India if we were to actually have leadership in this area? What is it that we can build in the ecosystem to achieve that leadership? And
Sure.
would love to start with you, and of course then Jay, and of course Helene can give a global perspective on that. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Helene is already ready with that, but here are my 3 inputs.
Thank you. No, I'm just tying on to what you just said, this stepwise approach. And I think there are very, very good examples, and to work in public-private partnerships, because you need to install these really good solutions that comes from everywhere, but you need to install it and integrate it into the society. And there, one model is to build around public-private partnerships, and then government, academia, industry partners come together. You already talked about it in Art Park, for example, but it can be around really clear goals. And I mentioned one example here, which is for Sweden and India. We are really gearing up in India as a Volvo Group, but there is also from Sweden a lot of collaboration with India. It's one initiative called CITIS, Sweden India Transport Innovation and Safety Partnership. And that goal that they have clearly stated is to make India roads and transport systems safer and to ease the load of current system and to stay sustainable and affordable. And I think you were onto something really important. You cannot do everything at one go, but you can do it in stepwise approach. And then my lessons learned would be one thing to not forget about. It's to, in parallel with technology and business innovation, work with policies and start with that work very early on, in parallel with the development, because that is key when you want to install it in the larger system. When you come together with the products, whatever it might be, with the infrastructure, it needs to work hand in hand, and it has to be one system. So you need to work on higher systems approaches and together with policies hand in hand to really make it integrated in a quick way. So that would be my lessons to bring forward.
Thanks a lot. I think that's
Let me
some
try
of
and
the
augment
interesting
a little
points.
bit of this, Umakant. So if I was to start off, I think India really needs to take some moonshot research projects. Let's face it, that we have been challenged to solve some of our grandeur challenges. The good part is our government, our policymakers are pretty clear that today, for the very first time, we can take advantage of this transformational technology that is taking place and actually solve our problems. We have to inspire researchers to do the work at the highest level. Jay very eloquently defined that if Flipkart needs to move to the next level of consumers in tier 2 and tier 3, we need to be able to speak to them in the language that they're comfortable with and avoid what they're uncomfortable, which is to use touchpads or keypads. How about basically working together and inspiring our nation to build language from its baseline, whether you build it from Sanskrit or from Davangiri, but let's basically go and solve that problem together, because we can't afford to lose the essence when we talk. Obviously, language is such that domain to domain, the context lies differently, and we need to do that. So it's very important that we pick up one or two where we learn right from the fundamental of the infrastructure all the way to solving a problem of application, how we do and how do we learn. There's a reason why Volvo talks to NVIDIA. If I were just a chip company, as I was introduced in VIDIA, Volvo wouldn't have spoken to me ever.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic point. Yeah, just wanted to highlight that part. I think so. One point that Helene mentioned, which is very interesting, is of course the public-private model and bringing industry government and academia together, right, to attempt some of these, both technology innovation as well as business model innovations that are going to happen. And what you're pointing out is another interesting perspective, which is about the moonshot, the societal scale AI, and especially involving languages, because that will really break through, for India as a nation. And I think at this point of time, actually, I would just quickly ask Jay. I mean, because they've been at the forefront of this, trying out things with the Indic languages, and what are the things that you think, or what are the key lessons, or what is it that we can actually bring up on the policy front that Helene was talking about? What can we build in this ecosystem to achieve leadership?
Absolutely, Makam. See, I think as you pointed out, right? So we have been, given that we have scale, we have data, there is a lot of interest, in fact, from academia as well to work with us, right? So academia has some of the best and brightest minds in the country. But what they lack is basically access to real world data at scale, right? So this is kind of a marriage made in heaven, and we need problems that need solutions, and they have solutions that are looking for problems, right? So to put it in a simplified manner, right? So we have actually struck like MOUs with, for example, IIT Patna. We have a deep engagement there to work on very fundamental technologies on NLP and machine translation and so on. And similarly with IIT Kharagpur and other premier institutes in the country, IISc as well, we have done a lot of work on use of AI for various important problems for us as a business to solve, right? Be it in fashion tech, be it in logistics and optimization, as well as on areas like robotics and so on, right? So I think there is an opportunity for the government to play a role in scaling up this sort of a partnership that today happens in pockets, and creating a policy framework to enable this to happen at scale across all public funded institutes. Also on elements like, for example, the personal data protection bill is currently in with the joint parliamentary committee that is actually doing consultations with various industry stakeholders, and would probably soon be tabled for being passed in the parliament, right? So we believe that will bring a lot of policy clarity, because at the heart of any AI system is a data that flows into it, and having that policy clarity on what are the rights and obligations for the generators of the data as well as the holders of the data, be it data subjects or the custodians, and so all of that stuff will make it easier for us to have a clear roadmap on how do we utilize this. And also, if you look at it from a larger perspective, right? If India is I would say the one of the top 2 or 3 countries that produces the largest number of engineers every year in the world, right? And our demographic dividend has been well documented, right? And for example, the Stanford AI Vibrancy Index actually ranks India as the country number 2 country, right, with the most potential to create impact in the AI-driven digital economy. So I think we have a lot of the ingredients going, which can be cooked into something that is transformative and magical. I think if you look at the vision of a $1 trillion digital economy in the next 3 to 5 years, and if you look at the ambitions and aspirations of other countries like China, for example, through their AI national AI policy, has said that they're looking at 26% of their economy, which is already an economy that is worth well north of like $10 trillion, right? And by 2030, you can imagine how large it would be. And 26% of that economy, they estimate, is going to be driven through AI, right? So that's just an astounding figure, right? The potential is enormous. I think in terms of the government initiatives, the national policy on AI strategy, which Niti Aayog has been driving, is actually a fantastic start. So that actually talks about a 3-pronged approach, right? On the policy front and building ecosystems front are some of the things. And also in terms of upskilling, reskilling people so that they can be better prepared for this new economy that is coming fast and thick on us, right? So this is going to create transformations as well as disruptions in various sectors of the economy, and this is a problem that cannot be left only to individual corporations and businesses to solve, right? Government definitely has a huge role to play. And even in terms of the Digital India movement and in terms of the Atmanirbhar Bharat and other such initiatives that the government has put forward, there are a lot of incentives being put in place to drive the digital economy forward. And of course, any part of the digital economy in the future, a large part of it will actually be AI driven, right? To summarize, I would say that, like, say, if you look at India, it is well known that we skipped a few generations of technology, right? For example, on communications technology, a large part of our country did not ever adopt 2G, 3G. They directly landed on 4G, right? Similarly, a large part of our country, the first computing device they ever had was their smartphone, right? So they never went through the desktop to laptop to whatever else, right? So they directly landed on smartphones, right? So I think we have the ability, and we've demonstrated in the past that we can do technology generation skips, and we now have the opportunity to actually lead the world in AI. I believe that there are a lot of open problems that today still don't have a clearly established leadership position. For example, responsible AI, ethics in AI, etc., are well known and open problems where India can take policy stances and lead the way for the rest of the world. I think the opportunities are endless, in my opinion.
Fantastic. I think one of the things that you pointed out, of course, the NITI AI strategy document that came out, and actually Art Park actually is a pretty much a result of that. And I think this is an interesting and exciting space where we can attempt some of these problems which cannot be solved by just one company. It requires collaboration, and I think we have a lot to learn, from Sweden in terms of collaboration. I mean, how the industry, academia, and research work together so seamlessly. And we are thinking about some of the initiatives, and I would love to ask, Professor Bhardwaj to talk about some of these initiatives on, the language side, and of course on the core facilities that we are trying to build up there. Professor Bhardwaj?
Yeah, I think this industry academia partnership is very critical to really bridge the capacity gap we have. I think it was pointed out by multiple of the panelists. And so the attempt out here is to actually, it's a bold kind of an approach which the government is taking by funding and seeding all these innovation hubs in many of these institutions. The IIC one, we are calling it Art Park. And in IIC, what we want to do is to actually identify moonshot mission mode projects, as Vishal mentioned, in collaboration with industry and other academic partners, and kind of start working on those moonshot projects. And to enable these moonshot projects, we will need a bunch of facilities, and hopefully these facilities will enable the entire ecosystem. To give you an example, a 5G enabled drone test bed, right? So that is something which will be very interesting and unique, because to do 5G, you need licenses, and academic institutions will get licenses to do this. So I think that will be a key enabler, and the entire ecosystem will benefit. Besides the industrial ecosystem, we are also really looking to help train the younger people coming into these new technologies. And I think there is a lot of expertise in the industry which we would like to tap to come and deliver this kind of a training, so that we really kind of have this. The training is not just done by academicians in universities, but also people and experts in industry. And hopefully, this whole doing, learning, and teaching is a cycle which which is not siloed as it is done right now, but actually everyone participates and everyone contributes, and we're hoping that that will really spur and unlock the potential.
Yeah, and I think especially in this regard, the two key initiatives. One is of course on data, which is Data Setu. We're trying to build this privacy-preserving way of sharing data. At the same time, enabling people to build innovations on top. It's kind of interesting, and one of the early examples is the Bhasha Setu. That we're trying to build momentum around it. And of course, Flipkart and NVIDIA, they're looking to collaborate on that as well. And of course, another initiative that you talked about, which is about a 5G-enabled autonomous driving test bed. And I think that's going to change, of course, along with the drones. It's going to change, a lot of capability that might be available to innovate in India. So at this point of time, I'll actually quickly ask. We just got a message that we are supposed to close in 2 minutes. I think probably we, our enthusiasm have actually overshot our answers. Very quickly, from all, four of you, three of you, what are the big opportunities for collaboration, open opportunities for collaboration that you see, that we can partner in Art Park, or, people around us as well? Starting with Jay.
Yeah, I will be very, very brief and succinct, right? So there are 4 opportunities, I would say. One is robotics from our logistics network, which is extremely complex, trying to manage a couple of million shipments that we send out every day, and some of it coming back, and all of that stuff. There is substantial opportunities for AI, computer vision, and robotics-driven automation. And as I talked about earlier, we have opportunities in language technologies, voice technologies, and personalization. Similarly, on optimization, like, for example, demand forecasting, supply planning, and all of that stuff, there are a bunch of opportunities. So we would love to, and we are always open to opportunities for collaboration on all of these dimensions.
Fantastic. Helene?
Thanks. Yes, as I said, I'm representing this global concept called CampX, which is all about accelerating tech and business innovation. And we are planning very soon to open up one CampX in Bangalore. And, we are really gearing up the Volvo Group in Bangalore. But one part will be to start this up here in Bangalore, and there to try to work a lot together with the very bustling and exciting startup community in Bangalore. And it is really exciting. So I think that is one idea on an area to collaborate. And to, like you mentioned there before also, to work together with the government to be supported in innovation and take it from idea all the way to market. That is what the CampX concept is all about. Bring in the ideas, develop them quickly, and bring to market. And who knows the market in India better than the people in Bangalore? So that's why we're really looking forward to that. So thanks.
Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. So this is fantastic. Vishal, very quickly.
Okay, very quickly, if there was one thing that I'd like everyone to do, is to think about the right infrastructure. Our nation has always had a paucity of infrastructure. We struggle with that. We can't afford to do anything without the infrastructure. So we need to innovatively collaborate how we can create that infrastructure. Otherwise, these are all good discussions. It'll never take shape.
Fantastic. So on that note, I think of reality in terms of like, yes, we really need to respond to our present, and maybe we need to think very differently about our cities. And I think a smart city might have been a great initiative to start with, but actually, with AI and robotics, we can really take it to the next level. Professor Bhardwaj, very quickly.
I think they have identified all the key points out here. So infrastructure, as Vishal said, and the whole startup ecosystem, as Helene said, and coupled with some of the really large scale problems like what Flipkart Jayendran mentioned. I think it's a great mixture, explosive mixture. Hopefully it will ignite us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think at Art Park, we are ready to be ignited by this passion that all of you have displayed. Thanks a lot for your time. Of course, we overshot a bit. Thanks a lot for the patience from the organization who was actually organizing this as well. Bangalore Tech Summit 2020, it's been a pleasure to interact along with all of my co-panelists. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.